Text C7 to 82727 or go online and give just £2 a month now. Because we need you to help save the sight of children like Nananga. We need you to help save them from the torture of trachoma.
This is NDTV, and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
A very good evening. This is India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's start the show with headlines this Thursday evening. First up, the biggest story of the day. Israel accuses Hamas of backtracking on ceasefire deal, carries out fresh airstrikes ahead of an expected vote by the cabinet for the ceasefire deal. Friction over the Gaza ceasefire deal in Washington, with Joe Biden claiming that his team negotiated and thrashed out the deal, but Donald Trump says it was agreed upon only because his term is set to begin next week. Bollywood star Saif Ali Khan attacked early Thursday morning by intruder armed with knife at his Mumbai residence. Khan sustains knife injuries but is said to be out of danger. Hindenburg research that targeted the Adani Group said to be disbanded. Move after US lawmaker questions selective prosecution. An Indian space research organization begins 2025 on a high, successfully completes docking process of SpaceX satellites launched on the 30th of December. All right, our big story that we're tracking this evening. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a temporary ceasefire, opening a path to end the 15-month-long intense fighting in the Gaza region that has killed thousands of Palestinians. The agreement, which the Israeli cabinet is yet to approve, is set to take effect on Sunday and see the phased release of 33 Israeli hostages as well as Palestinian prisoners, while Israel will pull out its troops from the densely populated areas in Gaza. US President Joe Biden took credit for the months-long negotiations, but analysts also pointed to the incoming Trump administration's efforts to pressure Israel into the deal. This report examines and explains the entire detail of what really went behind the ceasefire that has finally come into being. Take a look.
More than 15 months of carnage, destruction and deaths. This vicious cycle is expected to come to a stop when the Israel-Hamas ceasefire agreement comes into effect on Sunday. After months of stalemate in negotiations, the big announcement was made on Thursday.
دولة قطر وجمهورية مصر العربية والولايات المتحدة الأمريكية الإعلان عن نجاح جهود الوساطة المشتركة بوصول طرفي النزاع في قطاع غزة إلى اتفاق بشأن تبادل الأسرى والرهائن والعودة إلى الهدوء المستدام وصولا لوقف دائم لإطلاق النار بين الجانبين.
I knew this deal would have to be implemented by the next team, so I told my team to coordinate closely with the incoming team to make sure we're all speaking with the same voice, because that's what American presidents do.
The ceasefire and hostages deal is split into 3 phases. The first will last 42 days and see the release of 33 hostages and about 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. Residents of North Gaza will start returning during this phase. In the second phase, all Israeli male hostages will be released and all IDF forces will be withdrawn from the enclave. The third phase would include the beginning of the reconstruction of Gaza and the exchange of bodies of deceased hostages and prisoners. While Gazans flocked to the streets in celebration, there were anxious faces on the Israeli side as people waited for their loved ones to be set free by Hamas. However, there was no let-up in the war on the ground in Gaza, as Israel intensified its strikes, resulting in the deaths of dozens of Gazans. After more than 46,000 deaths in Gaza and about 1,700 across the border, the most brutal conflict in West Asia seems to be finally coming to a close. Netanyahu claims certain roadblocks remain for the deal's complete execution. The question that now lingers is how long will peace actually prevail in the region? With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report for NDTV World.
All right, that tells you what exactly are the details and the contours of that entire ceasefire deal split into 3 phases. Let's get in our guests, but let me first start with Melissa Weiss, who is the executive editor of the Jewish Insider, joining me live from Tel Aviv. Melissa, good to have you on the show. Talk to us about what really happened behind the scenes, because it seems a similar proposition was offered about 6 months back. It was unpalatable then to the Prime Minister, but he seems to have accepted now. Talk to us about the implications of this and also what went behind the scenes.
Sure. Well, just to clarify, there is not a deal yet. Israel has not said that it has accepted a deal. We have had other parties say that they've accepted it, but here in Israel, it is not a done deal until the Prime Minister says it is a done deal. And it is our understanding, based on what we are hearing from senior security officials, that there still remain some gaps in the agreement, specifically over which prisoners, which Palestinian prisoners inside of Israel will be released. And that's where we are now. And I would just like to go back to what you just asked. There was a deal on the table in May, but Israel accepted that deal. And I think if you look at the interviews that Secretary of State Tony Blinken has given in his final days in office, what President Joe Biden has said in his final days in office, the deal that was on the table in May was a deal that Israel and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreed to. It was Hamas that walked away from those negotiations. And you even had Secretary of State Blinken saying just a few weeks ago in an interview with the New York Times that any time that Hamas perceived there to be daylight between the U.S. and Israel, that was when it was confident in walking away from the negotiating table. So I think what you saw in the spring was some daylight between the U.S. and Israel, in part over negotiations, but in part over arms sales. And Hamas took that, held on to it, and used it to its advantage to walk away from the negotiating table. Now, of course, the deal that we're seeing now is very similar to that deal in May. And when you look at the situation now versus 8 or 9 months ago, what you see is Hamas in a much weaker position, which is why they were forced back to the negotiating table and really pushed into making a deal. You know, think about where we were in May 2024. Yahya Sinwar was still alive. Mohammed Daif was still alive. Ismail Haniyeh was still alive. Hezbollah was still running free in Lebanon. The Assad regime was still in place in Syria. All of these things have changed.
Absolutely.
In this amount of...
That entire region now has been completely changed. And I think that's the larger implication of what really this war has achieved, whether it is about Syria, whether it's about Lebanon, whether it's about Iran itself. Those are the larger changes that the Middle East region as a whole has changed. Before I get in some of the other guests, Melissa, I want to ask you, you're right about the fact that it's not yet ratified, so it's not a deal till it's actually announced. But what's the mood like? Are the people willing to accept this? Because there are still several quarters who feel that this is not really favorable to Israel. But what does it look like on ground?
It's a great question. Now, there was actually a survey taken about a week ago by the Israel Democracy Institute, which regularly polls on Israeli attitudes. And they found that 58% of Israelis support the deal that is on the table. So you can see in Israel overwhelming support for this deal. A majority of the country supports entering into this hostage release and ceasefire agreement. Now, whether or not that's enough to get it over the finish line remains to be seen. But the mood here is hopeful, it is apprehensive. We will see what happens.
Indeed, let's see what really happens as far as whether or not there is actually a deal on the table or not. There are positive signs because there are external factors as well, and we're going to talk about all of that. And Melissa, stay with us because we're slipping into a very short break. We come back on the other side and talk more about the implications. Is this really a stepping stone to lasting peace, or is this now going to be more of a stopgap arrangement before things actually unravel? We talk on that and more. Stay with us. We come back with this story.
We all know animals have feelings. They depend on kindness, just like you and me. So imagine how they feel when they're beaten, starved, and unloved. Every minute, the RSPCA is called on to save animals in physical agony and mental torment. It's unbearable to see the pain in their eyes. We refuse to give up on them, but to rescue them from a life of fear, we urgently need animal lovers like you to donate today. Please call 0800 121 4260 or text KIND to 84903 to give £2 a month to the RSPCA. Your gift will help fund more life-saving rescues, more emergency treatment, and more gentle rehabilitation. Every month, you'll be helping to keep animals free from pain and sadness, so they can find the comfort and joy they deserve. Right now, across the country, thousands are suffering deliberate harm. But together, we can show animals what kindness feels like. Together, we can rescue them. So please, call 0800 121 4260, text KIND to 84903, or visit our website to start your monthly donation today. Thank you.
Sitting quietly while your car is made all shiny. Downtime can be just fine too. Ready meal is piping. Waterproof on the loo. Just enjoy your back tattoo. Tea break, face break, maybe even watch the ad break. Sometimes it's not time for some tombola, right? It's enjoying lasagna time, chilling with a book time, or time to visit your nan time. Put the phone down.
I've been thinking, I want to plan my funeral so it feels more like a celebration. My parents always said I was born dancing. I just love it. Bhangra, disco, even line dancing. So when my time comes, I want to have music, dancing, the lot.
With over 150 years' experience, you can count on Co-op Funeral Care to help you pre-plan the funeral you want. To find out more, visit Co-op Funeral Care or give us a call.
Sign up and start saving with Quidco today. Get cashback every time you shop on over 5,000 brands. It always pays to Quidco.
Welcome back. You're watching our special edition of India Global, where we are asking the question, how long will peace actually last in the ceasefire that is yet to be ratified, and is hoping that this could pave the way for peace to actually happen. Okay, let's get in Melissa, who's joining us from Tel Aviv. Melissa, before slipping into a break, we had that breaking news that's coming in that Israel has actually delayed cabinet vote on Gaza ceasefire hostage deal, saying that Hamas has actually gone back on parts of the agreement. Before we get into this back and forth, the question I want to ask you is this reflective of the lack of trust when it comes to the two sides? And will that make the chances of ceasefire and lasting peace that much tougher?
Well, let's not pretend that there is any trust between Israel and Hamas now or ever. The trust is on the negotiators and the middlemen and the parties who are involved, the U.S., Egypt, Qatar. The hope is that they will, certainly Egypt and Qatar, keep Hamas in compliance with the agreement. Remember, senior Hamas officials live in Qatar and Turkey. So both of those countries have enormous sway over what the top echelons of the terror group do. So there is no trust between the groups, but I don't think that's the cause for what is going on right now. It sounds like Hamas has, in the words of the Israeli Prime Minister, reneged, gone back on one core part of the agreement, which is oversight over which released prisoners who have committed serious crimes against Israelis will be released in the agreement. And that's an understandable thing, because when you look at Israel's history with releasing prisoners, There's the most high-profile case. Alam Tamimi was released. She was responsible for the Sbarro bombing during the Second Intifada that killed more than a dozen Israelis. And
Indeed.
she's now living in Jordan, where she is a TV show host. And that is because she was released in a deal. And so there's concern that the people that are released in the coming days, should a deal go through.
That is a very legit and a real fear and threat that Israel and the Israeli government will have to try and overcome, because that is what really looks like as the best case scenario in terms of the deal that is on the table. Thanks much, Melissa. Really appreciate you joining me from Tel Aviv on a story which has two angles, a story which has two sides. And I'm going to make sure that I'm going to keep telling our viewers the two sides of this. We're going to get our guest this evening, Hassan T. Al-Hassan, who's joining me from Bahrain, Dr. Wael Awad, who's in India. He's a Syrian, both of whom have said that they don't want to be with a person from Israel joining in, but that defeats the purpose of a discussion, because as I said, this is a ceasefire between two parties. If the two parties are not able to have a TV discussion together, then what are we really looking at in terms of a possible deal? James Boren joins me as well from the US. And James, let me ask you this first question. The fact that we are at a situation where there is such deep mistrust between the parties, are we really looking at a peace that could last longer than the 42 days of the first phase?
No, and I really have not had any optimism about this deal going through and being fully approved. So I was laying heavy emphasis last night on the fact that the deal had not even been voted on in the cabinet. And unfortunately, when I woke up this morning and saw the headlines that there had been a delay and that there was a lot of mistrust, I was like, here we go again. You know, this is why I have generally not even talked much about any peace deals or even ceasefires, because they do typically break down. And I would like to place emphasis on the role that the Netanyahu government is in backing out of these possible ceasefires. You know, we have to also look at the players in the Israeli government who refuse to make any ceasefire a possibility. They have constantly delayed, constantly offered excuse after excuse not to get into a ceasefire. And I believe that that is largely and primarily based on the fact that they want this war to continue. And they don't want the ceasefire. And so they're looking for even the merest little excuse in order to back out and say, well, we tried. And, you know, now we have to go back to war.
Indeed, it's a very precarious situation. And let's get in Mr. Al-Hassan from Bahrain. Sir, your first, the first thing I want to ask you is that at this stage, it is yet to be, the ceasefire deal is yet to be ratified by Israeli cabinet. But there are some reports that seem to indicate that Hamas has already gone back on what it had committed on the negotiating table. What are the prospects of this deal from that point of view in the climate of mistrust, in the climate of such deep mistrust between the two sides?
So to begin with, before I answer your question, just for the record, I've made no refusal whatsoever not to appear with any person from any nationality. That hasn't happened. Beyond that, and to answer your question more directly, I think it's these are Israeli allegations at the moment. We don't have independent, nonpartisan confirmation from any of the three mediators, be it the United States, Egypt, or Qatar, that Hamas has gone back on any part of the deal. We don't have, as far as I know, an independent confirmation from Hamas saying that they've gone back on any part of this deal. So this is an Israeli allegation. It has to be treated as an Israeli allegation unless and until it is verified by Hamas sources or by any of the independent three mediators. Now, beyond that, it's obvious that we also need to be aware of some of these narratives. The Biden administration has fed us for over a year the false narrative, and I've heard it firsthand from senior Biden administration officials, that there is simply no deal conceivable, feasible, that Hamas would agree to, and that it would simply be impossible to get Israel to budge on the idea of a full withdrawal, the assumption that the Israelis would simply not leave or would not agree to leave the Netzarim corridor or Philadelphia corridor. Both of these have now been proven to be absolutely false. There is a deal that, as far as we know, Hamas has accepted, and with the necessary pressure that the Trump administration has been willing to exert on Israel, Israel has budged on and went back to this idea of a full withdrawal from Gaza.
Dr. Awad, is this temporary truce, or could this actually pave the way for lasting peace in the region?
Gaurie, let me put it straightforward. I think it is President Trump who have the credit of forcing Netanyahu to sign a deal which has been on the table since May of last year, because Biden himself repeatedly said in his last speech that 3 times he's mentioned that the deal was already on the table, but it was Netanyahu, in fact, who was refused even to acknowledge or sign the deal because of the pressure from his internal government and his coalition parties who refused to reach to such a deal. Even Smotrich, till this moment, he is refusing, and he is putting condition to Netanyahu that if you wanted to go for this deal, only go for the first phase of the deal, which have the release of the 33 prisoners who are alive from the Israeli side, with Hamas, and then we will go back and attack Hamas and achieve our objective of eliminating Hamas from there, achieving victories, and then we will release the rest of the hostages. So if that is the case, then I think what we are hearing, yes, is a mistrust is happening there, but there are guarantors who are providing this deal to be implemented on the table. First is the American administration. Second is the Arab capitals who've been participating in this negotiation.
Okay, Mr. Bowden, then let me ask you this question. And, we are playing those big questions graphics as well for our viewers to understand the contours of this discussion. Which the second part, which is equally important, is that will Israeli Prime Minister be able to garner the support from his right-wing members in the coalition to be able to push through this, because there are also deep discontentment in Israel with regard to a deal which looks very one-sided and favoring Hamas and being unfair to Israel. There are many sections who feel that way.
Right. I don't see Netanyahu being able to get the rest of his government behind him. Let's remember that in 2023, Smotrich and Oret Stroke came out in an article and talked about how horrible the 2005-2006 Gaza disengagement was, and how they wanted to go back into Gaza and finish the job of cleaning out the Palestinians and reoccupying it. And they lamented the lack of political will that they had for that. Now, that was July of 2023. Then all of a sudden, we have this very convenient war in October of 2023. So, I mean, this is an opportunity for people who are on the cabinet to carry out a strong political program to reoccupy that area.
Okay. Mr. Al-Hassan, then let me ask you this, that after phase 1 is completed, how soon do you think phase 2, phase 3 can actually be executed? In your assessment, how far away are we from this entire deal being closed and for peace to actually come in?
So there are many risks and many challenges that could potentially threaten the successful implementation of this deal. To take a close and nearby analogy to the Gaza case, the Lebanon case, a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel has been in place since at least November. And according to the Lebanese government, there have been at least 470 Israeli violations since November of that ceasefire deal. And so I think the temptation for Israel to potentially violate a ceasefire agreement will very much be on the table, especially if the extremist right-wing members of Netanyahu's coalition and government apply enough pressure on Israel to do so. But I think beyond this immediate risk of ceasefire violations, I think the big picture is that for us to see a so-called lasting peace on the short to medium term, that will depend on very largely on the US's ability to restrain Israel, partly from committing violations, but also from potentially precipitating another confrontation with Iran. There are many in Israel and even in the United States who think that now is the right time to strike Iran's nuclear program. That would be an extremely dangerous and risky course of action. So part of this will depend on whether the Americans can restrain the Israelis from taking high-risk action against Iran, and whether the Americans can deter the Iranians from trying to reconstitute their regional network of armed proxy groups.
Indeed.
Now, beyond the short to medium term, I think the long-term success of this peace will depend on the Trump administration's ability to broker successfully, working with Arab and other non-Arab partners, a long-term agreement and a long-term peace plan with the Palestinians and the Israelis as well.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm completely out of time, but thank you so much for joining me in this discussion. And Mr. Al-Hassan, thank you for clarifying that you would like to join with any nationality. Look forward to having you again on my show next week with an expert from Israel to really talk in detail about what happens from here on. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out the time today. And as far as the bottom line is concerned, that the bottom line really is, viewers, that the Gaza ceasefire deal is
Mr. Hollywoods!
Oh, not you guys.
Have you opened your personalized deals from Otto Sergey?
Wait, no.
300 selfies, spray tan appointment, modeling agency, rejection. Ah, found it! Your personalized car insurance deals from Otto Sergey, already done for you.
Ah, simples.
It's a bit dry. A new era. Get personalized deals delivered. Simples.
Get PlusNet full fibre for $28.99. Oh, wait. Now just $25.99 a month. Great value broadband you can count on with 145 megabit speeds. Plus, you'll feel the warmth of real people ready to help, even on the weekend. Here to answer big questions or small questions. Ah, that's a plus. Get in touch and come direct for our best price. Offer ends 22nd of January. Toasty.
Actor of the Year. By the way, my dear friends, you know, probably I am one of the first ones in the history of NDTV to have this rare, proud honor of announcing and honoring as in the place of a real hero to a reel of my own movie, Shrikant. Without a further ado, with great admiration, love and due respect, the best actor of the year goes to Shri Rajkumar Rao. Please come on to the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rajkumar Rao's versatility, dedication to meaningful cinema, and consistent delivery of powerful performances continued in 2024. His recent roles in Shrikant, Mr. and Mrs. Mahi, Stree 2, and Wiki Vidya Ka Wo Wala video showcases his deep commitment to his craft, often transforming himself physically and emotionally to suit the character's demands, making Rajkumar Rao the NDTV Actor of 2024.
जोरदार तालियां राजकुमार के लिए। भाई हम सब के दिलों के राजकुमार भी तो हैं ये। राजकुमार आपसे पूछना चाहेंगे हम 2024 मेरे ख्याल से आपके जीवन का सबसे सुनहरा साल आप इसको मानेंगे?
Well, definitely. First of all, thank you so much, NDTV. Thank you, sir. Thank you, jury. Thank you, Shrikant, the real Shrikant, for giving us your life story and for giving me this opportunity to play you on screen, because it was one of the most challenging parts. But I had so much fun because when there are challenges, then only it's fun. Otherwise, it gets very monotonous, very boring.
आपने तो अपॉर्चुनिटी छीन लिया, नहीं तो मैं खुद प्ले करता था यार.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news.
Welcome back. You're watching India Global with me, Gaurie Dwivedi. We now turn our attention to the other big story we are tracking. TikTok plans to shut U.S. operations of its social media app used by 170 million Americans on Sunday, when a federal ban is set to take effect on 19th of January. Reports, however, do indicate that President-elect Donald Trump, whose term begins a day after the ban is set to be implemented, is considering issuing an executive order to suspend the enforcement of a shutdown for 60 or maybe 90 days, that is 2 to 3 months. And as per the law that will take effect on 19th of January, it will become illegal for marketplace entities like Apple's App Store and Google's Play Store, as well as cloud service providers like Oracle, to distribute, maintain or update or enable the distribution, maintenance or updating of a foreign adversary controlled application. So the question that we are asking today is that TikTok ban threat is looming large, and will Donald Trump halt this TikTok ban? And do migrating TikTok refugees pose a threat in terms of security concerns for the US? And what happens to TikTok after the US ban? There are many questions that are floating here and could have a larger implication of how Donald Trump's administration is really going to approach Chinese data threat as far as its entire 4-year term is concerned. And that would include semiconductors, chips, everything related to technology, because of how he deals with the TikTok ban. All right, let's get in our two guests joining me this evening. I have Jaspreet Bindra, who is founder of AI and Beyond, as well as Tech Whisperer. And I also have David Johnston, who is an American journalist and author. David, let me start with you. How do you read the situation? As things stand right now, 19th of January is when the ban is set to kick in. But most expect that maybe the moment President-elect Donald Trump starts his tenure, he could just overrule or put this ban in abeyance, if not completely overturn it.
Exactly, Gaurie. Let's remember that this began with Donald Trump, when he was president before, wanting to ban TikTok. This was his idea, and Congress, with both parties supporting it, passed this law. What did Donald say the other day? Well, now that I'm a star on TikTok, I don't want it to go. So, his concern clearly is not national security, which is what motivated Congress and motivated him, he says, originally. It's that this appeals to his ego because it helps make him a star. And it's important to understand that the law, as you pointed out, doesn't require them to shut down. It simply says no one can download the TikTok app, and TikTok may not update the technology, which means that over time it would slowly fade and fail to work.
Indeed. Jaspreet Bindra, you want to come in there in terms of how do you read the situation? Because this is just essentially about the political climate of different administrations, how they approach an issue which has security implications, but of course there are larger political ambitions under which it will operate.
Gaurie, what David said is right. Actually, the person who first introduced the idea of the TikTok ban was Donald Trump in his last administration. The concern is actually true. If you know, India banned TikTok a couple of years back, along with many other Chinese apps. And the concern is that the Chinese government could potentially have a backdoor into the data collected by TikTok, and therefore could misuse this data or abuse this data going further. So I think the concerns are real. Donald Trump now, has had a change in heart, and he wants the app to be back, possibly just to make people happy, possibly because, as David said, he's a star. But what he's also said, very interestingly, is that I want the app to be back, but the data of the personal data of all Americans to be protected. Now, that is almost an impossible task, because it's the data and it's the algorithm, which is really the secret sauce of TikTok, which is driving the app. And the app is nothing without the data and the algorithm. And so how he pulls that off, or his people pull that off, I really don't know. And the last thing here is that actually the Trump administration begins, if I'm not mistaken, 1 day after the ban. So the ban will actually take effect, whether Trump wants it or not. And what he'll have to figure out is how to reverse that 24 hours after the ban has taken effect.
Okay, so presidents,
see
of
what
course, have the power to issue executive orders, and that's how policy actions at some time actually is expedited, and at other times it adds to political uncertainty. David Johnston, then let me ask you the question, which is, what is the Musk angle here? There's been a lot of talk about Musk may acquire the US operations. The Chinese have said no, they won't. Jaspreet has clarified that, if they're not selling the algorithm, it's worth nothing for Musk. But the fact is that Elon Musk's social media ambitions and aspirations are there for everyone to see, because it plays and feeds into his larger goals, doesn't it? So what's the Musk factor here?
So, Gaurie, what we're about to see in America is in large part an abandonment of the historic democracy we've had and an oligarchy. And Donald Trump, who's always trying to please those who flatter him, clearly sees great benefit in Elon Musk and his money. He's poured $250 million into Trump getting back into office. And if Elon Musk wants ByteDance's company, TikTok, Trump is highly likely to do everything he can to help him achieve that goal. National security, which was at the core of why India banned TikTok, why the US Congress in a bipartisan bill said we're going to ban TikTok, that isn't of no concern to Donald Trump. He does not have the knowledge to appreciate national security issues, and his nature is he's a kleptocrat. Donald has spent his whole life cheating other people out of money, not paying his taxes, not fulfilling contract obligations, as a career white-collar criminal. So to Donald, where's the praise for me and where's the money? Not national security is what determines his conduct.
Okay. Jaspreet, finally, how do you see this case having a larger bearing in terms of how the Trump administration views tech threats coming from China?
Well, the whole hawkishness on China is actually a bipartisan movement in the US. So both the Republicans and the Democrats do want the screws tightened on China from a tech perspective and other perspectives. Also, if you look at the Trump administration and the kind of people that he has appointed around him, most of them are very hardcore China hawks. So I do not think that the pressure on China, whether through chips or many of the other trade or tariffs or any of the other measures actually getting changed, because it has bipartisan support and there are all these people who around him who kind of have this. But beyond what David said, the other thing about Donald Trump, as we have seen, is that he doesn't look at things strategically. He looks at things transactional. Even in TikTok, for him, it's a transaction. Maybe a transaction which has to do with Musk, or maybe there are supporters or lobbyists who are kind of doing, who are influencing him, and so on. So from his perspective, everything that happens vis-a-vis China, he will look at it as a transaction by transaction rather than overall holistic picture.
All right, let's leave it there. David Johnston, Jaspreet Bandra, really appreciate you joining me on a story which, as I said, has larger implications of how the US is going to see tech threats coming in as far as China is concerned. Whether it is semiconductors, whether it is AI, whether it is the chips that are coming in, all of that is going to be seen through the prism of how Donald Trump evaluates the TikTok ban threat. All right, on that note, let's quickly now turn our focus to the other big story that's coming in, which is the Singapore president, who is in India, was given a ceremonial welcome at the Rashtrapati Bhavan on Thursday by President Murmu and Prime Minister Modi, marking the beginning of his state visit to India. This visit is his first as the president of Singapore, coincides with the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations between India and Singapore. Stressing the bilateral ties between the two countries, the Singaporean leader noted that Singapore is the largest investor in India, and the defense ties between the two countries are also robust and continue to grow and strengthen. Stating the Indian and Singapore leaders see eye to eye, the president also stated that both countries are working together in the field of digitization as well as sustainability. And what you're seeing, viewers, on your screens are those latest visuals coming in of the ceremonial welcome being accorded to the Singapore president. All right, let's get in my colleague Ghazali joining me live to talk to us about the visit, its highlights, and why is it that it's so important for India and its larger Indo-Pacific goals. Ghazali, let's start by talking about the significance of this visit, what all he is likely to cover, and then we talk in detail about the larger relationship and what it means.
See, one of the major domains where the discussions happened today was about the sustainable or renewable energy international power grid station, where India, being the part of Solar Alliance, the Global Solar Alliance, India and Singapore are going to set up an international power grid transmission through which India and Singapore can supply power to each other, that too on the basis of solar energy. This is one of the most significant discussions which have happened today on the sidelines of the meeting of Singapore's president with our president, Dwivedi Murmu. And besides that, there are other avenues or other spheres where India and Singapore will look forward for more cooperation when it comes to a space sector, when it comes to defense technology, and also when it comes to digitization, because one of the, you can say, flagship schemes or programs which India keeps talking about, or when Indian Prime Minister goes to another country, he keeps talking about the digital payment initiative. The same initiative has inspired Singapore also to have collaboration on that front. But besides that, there are certain areas like skill development centers. India and Singapore are already running a joint cooperation which has culminated into 6 different skill development centers, one which is running in Odisha, where the Singapore president will also visit. Besides that, India is also looking to diversify its energy needs. That is why this International Solar Alliance, which Prime Minister Modi has spoken about in G20, in other summits as well. So India is looking for getting more partners in that alliance, and also not to just look forward towards east, towards Western world to get its energy needs. And that is why India is diversifying its partners in the sector of defense, energy, space technology, digitization, as well as a skill development center. You know, India has been training officers or say government officials of different countries like Maldives when it comes to training their public servants. India is also taking out, carrying out developmental projects, or what we call the part of cultural diplomacy or public diplomacy, when you carry out such projects in other countries which benefit their people. So that is also one of the focus areas where India, when Indian Prime Minister visited Singapore last year in September, he spoke about is it the Trivandrum Cultural Center, setting up a chair like that. So these announcements which were made last year may see finally the light of the day, since
I think there's a lot of issues to cover and a lot of ground to cover. That's the economic and the business side of it, Ghazali. The other aspect to that, of course, is the political, coming together of minds when it comes to issues related to the Indo-Pacific, the issues related to the strategic location of Singapore. There is, of course, 70% people are of Chinese origin there. Singapore wants to remain away when it comes to, not taking sides in the entire Indo-Pacific region. But the fact is, its strategic location, deeper engagement with India does allow India to have a larger play in that area.
Certainly. You see, Gaurie, the way the global shift is happening, we have multiple alliances like Quad is there, BRICS is there, G20 is there, and the Western countries who sort of take the moral high ground when it comes to steer the global politics, they are also facing a kind of challenge, because India is already being considered the voice of the global South. The Prime Minister has spoken about several global issues for which we are geographically very distant from it, and yet we have voiced our opinion, have influenced the decision as well up to a certain level. And that is why India certainly at least needs all its neighbor on its side, when we know the Chinese influence, be it in Bangladesh, be it in Maldives, and we saw how frequent engagement with different heads of states in our neighborhood has also sort of changed their minds or has influenced them to get towards our side. And that is exactly what the motive of this visit as well, where Singapore's president is in India. We saw Sri Lankan president visiting India, then going back to China, visiting China. Yet we are very hopeful that when it comes to global alliance, or when it comes to positioning ourselves in that platform, India is trying to get maximum leaders on its side.
All right, we leave it there. Mohammad Ghazali, appreciate you joining us to give us a lowdown of why this visit of the Singapore president is so very important. All right, on that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back on the other side with more news, including the latest from Bangladesh and why the socialism and secularism in the country is under threat. Stay with us. We talk to you about that and a lot more.
fix him, love. Poor pet. Just shows you never know what's going to happen. Which reminds me, I need to protect the life we've built. That's why I'm looking into smart family life insurance.
Hi, I'd like a quick quote, please.
OK. You can choose a benefit amount up to £750,000, depending on your age. If you're a UK resident aged 18 to 64, you can apply with just a few health and lifestyle questions. For £250,000 of cover, the price starts at just £14.77 a month.
That's less than I thought. And it could help my husband with the mortgage.
Just like families, not all life insurance is the same. That's why we offer the Smart Family Guarantee.
That's good to know.
You'll also receive a 100% advance in the event of terminal illness and 10% cash back on your first year's premiums. That's the Smart Cashback. Plus, you'll also get your choice of a £125 gift card.
Protect the life you've built the smart way. To get a free quote today, call our specialist UK team on 0800 977 5753 or visit smartinsurance.co.uk.
This is an important message for people living with diabetes from people living with diabetes.
When I was experiencing the symptoms of diabetes, I didn't know what was going on.
You go on the internet and it's full of horror stories.
I didn't understand about carbs, I didn't understand about blood glucose levels.
That's why the support I get as a Diabetes UK member is so important.
You can become a Diabetes UK member for just £3 a month. When you do, you'll receive a practical guide specific to your type of diabetes and a copy of Balance magazine 4 times a year. Plus, you'll help support research that could lead to better treatments for all types of diabetes.
As members, we're all working it out together.
Call 0800 144 5410 or go online to become a Diabetes UK member for just £3 a month. Join us now because membership can help you learn to live better with diabetes.
With retirement round the corner, I want to spend more time with my family and less time worrying about the numbers. Which reminds me.
Welcome to British Seniors, the UK's #1 rated provider of over 50s life insurance.
Hi, I'd like a quick quote.
No problem. We're proud to offer our seniors lifetime guarantee. With 100% of claims having been paid, we guarantee your premiums will never go up and that you'll speak to one of our specialists in the UK. UK residents aged 50 to 80 are guaranteed to be accepted. Depending on your age, your loved ones can get a cash payout up to £10,000.
And that money could help with funeral costs or even as a gift for the grandkids. I'll do it.
Plus, when you sign up, you'll receive a £135 gift card and free 24/7 GP advice and health services.
You got them all right. That's amazing.
Be proud to protect your loved ones with British Seniors. To get a free quote today, call our UK team on 0800 977 5808 or visit britishseniors.co.uk.
Welcome back. You're watching India Global with me, Gaurie Dwivedi. We now turn our attention to the latest that's unfolding in Bangladesh, where the Constitution Reform Commission has recommended dropping the fundamental principles such as secularism and socialism from the country's constitution. The commission, in a report submitted to the chief of Bangladesh's interim government, Mohammad Yunus, recommended the 3 principles of secularism, socialism and nationalism be replaced with equality, human dignity, social justice and pluralism. Out of the 4 existing principles enshrined in the Constitution enacted in 1972, it's only democracy that is proposed to be retained. The Commission contended that the 4 new principles reflect the spirit of the 1971 Liberation War and the aspirations of the citizens after the protests in 2024 that toppled former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's Awami League government in August. Now, the question that we ask, and the bottom line, viewers, really is that as this commission has submitted its report, will it pave the way for elections to take place? There are a whole host of recommendations that this commission has put in place, including the fact that there should be a term limit on the Prime Minister's tenure. There should also be a reduction in the tenure of each of the parliamentarians, whether it's the National Assembly or the upper house, which will have proportional representation, from 5 years to 4 years. Besides, the most worrying part, of course, is the dropping the word secularism from the country. Yes, Bangladesh is an Islamic country. 91% of Bangladesh is Muslim. They follow the Islam faith. But the 9% of the population, which has been facing increased attacks in the last 6 months, ever since the student protests started, How will they be protected if secularism is dropped from the constitution of Bangladesh? In the last 50-odd years, 17 times Bangladesh constitution has been changed. But dropping the word secularism would probably have the most far-reaching impact on Bangladesh's minorities, including the Hindus there, going forward. All right, now turning our attention to some of the other stories coming in. Trump's picks continue to face tough questioning during their Senate confirmation hearings, whether it's Pam Bondi, President-elect Donald Trump's nominee for U.S. Attorney General, who vowed to end the weaponization of the Justice Department at her confirmation hearing on Wednesday, and she said her focus will be on reducing crime and upholding the law. The former Florida Attorney General, who represented Trump during his first impeachment, appeared before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday to testify about her nomination, which is all but certain to be approved in the GOP-controlled Senate. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida called for an end to the war in Ukraine and said Europe must decrease its reliance on Washington, and declared America's competition with China the defining question of the century during his confirmation hearing on Wednesday to be the Secretary of State. Listen in to what both of these candidates had to say at these crucial hearings.
Senator, I think that is the whole problem with the weaponization that we have seen the last 4 years and what's been happening to Donald Trump. They targeted Donald Trump. They went after him, actually starting back in 2016. They targeted his campaign. They have launched countless investigations against him. That will not be the case if I am Attorney General. I will not politicize that office. I will not target people simply because of their political affiliation. Justice will be administered even-handedly throughout this country.
In Moscow, in Tehran, in Pyongyang, dictators, rogue states now sow chaos and instability and align with and they fund radical terror groups. And then they hide behind their veto power at the United Nations Security Council or the threats of nuclear war. The post-war global order is not just obsolete, it is now a weapon being used against us.
Turning our attention to the UK, where the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has made his first trip to Kiev as Prime Minister, vowing to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position in 2025. Arriving on Thursday morning, Starmer accompanied Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to lay flowers at a wall of remembrance for those killed in the war with Russia, telling reporters the UK will never let up on giving the necessary support to Ukraine. The trip is taking place to mark what Downing Street has called a landmark 100-year partnership pact with Ukraine. The agreement would formalize economic and military support already pledged to the country. His visit comes just days after Donald Trump is set to re-enter the White House. All right, moving on to another important news coming in. Hindenburg Research, the U.S. seller that has targeted several business entities, including the Adani Group, is going to be disbanded. Founder Nate Anderson has clarified there has been no particular threat or personal issue behind the decision to wind up. Remember, Hindenburg has been in the news for targeting the Adani Group in 2022 with what the group said was nothing but a lie and were calculated attacks on India. The short seller had also targeted Indian markets regulator chief Madhi Puri Budge and her husband in the past, who had called it an attempt at character assassination. And let's in fact listen in to a soundbite coming in from Mahesh Jetmalani on this.
Either he has already been sounded out, right, by investigating authorities in the US, or he fears that he will be investigated for his role in the entire attempt to shake India's stock market and economy through the bare hammering of Adani shares. So I certainly do think that the timing, his finally winding up shop. It is George Soros who is behind this attempted economic devastation of India. The signal seems to be that we can control you by controlling your economy.
All right. ISRO has successfully performed the docking of satellite as part of the space docking experiment of SpaceX. Earlier on 12th of January, ISRO brought the two spacecraft to 3 meters and then moved them back to safe distance in its trial attempt to dock the satellites. ISRO had successfully launched the space docking experiment mission on the 30th of December last month. The PSLV C-60 rocket carrying two small satellites along with 24 payloads had lifted off from the first launch pad of the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota, and about 15 minutes after liftoff, the two small spacecraft weighing about 220 kgs each were launched into the 475-kilometer circular orbit as intended. ISRO successfully performs docking of satellites as part of the SpaceX mission, and Prime Minister Modi had also congratulated ISRO on the same. Listen in to what the NDTV science editor Pallava Bakla had to say on this.
Indian scientists created history today. The Indian Space Research Organization successfully docked or mated two Indian satellites orbiting the Earth at about 475 kilometers above the Earth. This was an experiment which began last year on December 30th, 2024, when the SpaceX or the space docking experiment was launched using the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. In the last fortnight, ISRO made 3 unsuccessful attempts at docking, and finally, on the 4th attempt, ISRO managed to successfully dock the two satellites in space. Currently, the two satellites are orbiting together and are operated as a single spacecraft. Space docking is an essential enabling technology if India has to succeed in Chandrayaan-4 and in the making of the Bharatiya Antariksh Station. India used the Bharatiya docking system, for which ISRO has already taken a patent for this docking exercise. Docking is a very complex process, and till date, only America, Russia, and China have succeeded in doing it on their own strength. India becomes the 4th country to have successfully docked using indigenous technology. In the coming days, further experiments will be done on the docked spacecraft, and finally, the two spacecraft will be unmated and they will go about doing their job independently. India's docking experiment successfully completed by scientists at the Indian Space Research Organization. One small step for ISRO in a long journey for India in space technology.
All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Global. Thanks so much for watching.
Hi, it's Phoebe from Auto Trader's monthly electric car giveaway, and we're pleased to say that you've won a brand new electric car.
It's a dream, honestly, it really is a dream. Oh my god. Me and my boyfriend talk about the Auto Trader competition every single month. I was waiting for the know you ever won.
Sign up and start saving with Quidco today. Get cashback every time you shop on over 5,000 brands. It always pays to Quidco.
If you're homeless, you're never safe.
Tonight, too many young people like Kira will be at risk right here on our streets. But you could help a young person find safety and begin a new future by sponsoring a room at Centrepoint.
It's more than a room. You get real support and training to help you get your life back on track.
Please search Centrepoint Room online today or call 0808 281 8001 and be the turning point for a young person like Kira. Thank you.
I like making sure I've got all the right tools for the job. And now that I'm 50, that means looking after the life I've built, protecting my life if anything happened to me.
That's why I decided to learn more about over 50s life insurance from Cover Today. They're the only over 50s life insurer with no waiting period, unlike other insurers who could make you wait up to 2 years for full cover. With Cover Today, you're fully covered from day one. And you're covered for the whole of your life. Plus, unlike other things in life, the price never goes up. Learning more couldn't be simpler. Go online or talk to their friendly UK team in just one phone call.
Cover Today are the only over 50s life insurer with no waiting period and no annoying trips to the doctors either. Plus, you get your choice of a £125 gift card.
Cover Today has given me genuine peace of mind. And now that's done, I can get on with something much more interesting.
To find out more about Cover Today, call our friendly UK team on 0808 143 4733 or visit covertoday.co.uk.
Sticking to your resolutions is hard. But at Tesco Mobile, our deals always keep their word. Get a 60 gig SIM for just £13 a month with Club Card prices, plus £20 worth of Club Card points. Better still, that price is frozen for 2 years. That's a resolution you can rely on. It pays to be connected. Search Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Bull tamers in Tamil Nadu's Jallikattu grand finale at Alanganallur. But first, let's take you through the headlines we're tracking this hour. Bollywood star Saif Ali Khan is out of danger after a long surgery. He was stabbed 6 times inside his home. Police suspect burglary as the key motive as they identify one of the accused. Hindenburg research that targeted the Adani Group with allegations is set to shut down. The move comes after a lawmaker questioned selective prosecution. A shocking daylight attack on an ATM cash van leaves 2 security guards dead. 2 motorcycle-borne assailants shoot at the security and scoot with 93 lakhs in cash. Well, that's our top focus. The first story we're picking up this evening of that shocking